All right, so you watch my Baldur's Gate character creation guide right here. And if you haven't, you should. You have the ultimate character. You're ready to get into this fucking game. You don't understand what to do. You don't understand the basics of the game. If you haven't watched the guide, I highly recommend it, but we'll talk a little bit about what you need to know about stats, attributes right now. Basically, they're called abilities in this game for some reason. It should be like attributes or stats like that. That's what they're called in every game, but ability points. And you have a bunch of different categories. The main thing you guys want to know is for the character you're going to play, your primary stat will have a star next to it. You want that to be your highest stat, and you probably want to keep that at 17 because you most likely will upgrade it in the future. The rest of your stats, you don't want it at an odd number. You want it at an even number. So your second best stat that you want, probably like 16 or 14, something like that. Constitution, you always want to try to keep higher, but you don't want any odd numbers. Okay, guys, any odd numbers, that's silly. That's goofy. You don't want that because those actually are just the equivalent of the past even number. So 13 is the same as 12. 15 is the same as 14. And you're never going to upgrade those stats in the future. So don't leave those at an odd number. Leave those as an even number. The only thing you should leave it an odd number is your primary stat because you can upgrade that in the future when you get a feat at level 4, 8, or 12. Those abilities will be used in the future for ability checks. Basically, that's just when you cast a spell, make an attack roll, or do some sort of like persuasion event type deal. Not everything's persuasion. They use different proficiencies, but it depends on the stat. So those are very important, especially for combat, obviously. That's the main thing of this game. But, you know, if you want to talk a lot, which most people do, those matter as well. Mainly scale off charisma, but there are also some intelligence events, wisdom events. There's events of basically every kind in this game through the cutscenes and conversations. So it will matter based on the path you want to take through the game. If you want to brute force through doors and shit, you're going to need strength, right? If you want to persuade people or deceive them, you're going to need charisma, okay? So basically each different one, some are more for combat than others, but they all are actually for combat at the end of the day. Charisma tends to be more focused towards dialogue though. You might be confused about spells in this game a little bit. They're pretty confusing. You get spell slots, okay? And you're like, what is a cantrip? What is a spell slot? I don't understand. So when I thought spell slot at first, I thought, okay, I have 4 spell slots, which means I can only take 4 different spells in a combat, but I can cast them whenever I want. That couldn't be further from the truth. You can take as many spells in a combat as you can. Some classes let you take like literally infinite. Some, I think that's just wizard really. Some don't. So you take basically all the spells that you have that you were able to select into combat, but you can only use 4 of them. Okay, so if you have 4 spell slots, level 1 spell slots, for example, you can only use 4 spells. You could use 4 of the same spell, 2 and 2, 1 of each, or if you've got like 6 spells, you could use 4 out of the 6, and that's how that works. So you don't actually get to take like only 4 in. You only get to use 4 before you have to rest, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. But cantrips, however, are spells that you can cast infinitely. Okay, so you could cast the same cantrip 100 times if you wanted without resting. You could cast the different cantrips. They don't matter. They don't take any spell slots. They're different. So a cantrip is a spell you can cast infinitely. Okay, so for an attack roll, right? When you make an attack, you have to roll an attack roll. There are also some spells that specifically say attack roll on it, which means it will make an attack roll. And that's just going to roll the dice and add whatever modifier is relevant. Usually it's like strength or dexterity, depending on your weapon. Let's say you have a big 2-handed sword, that's going to be a strength, so it's going to add your strength modifier on top of that. So let's say you roll a 12, okay? And you have a 2 strength modifier. So you'll get 14 now. That also is dependent whether you hit or not, basically. That's what the attack roll is. So that's the first part of it. And you have to outroll the opponent's armor class. Their armor class is based on a bunch of different things, but you can see it if you just right click them and then click like examine, it'll tell you their armor class. And so if their armor class is 14 and you roll a 14, I believe it won't hit. You need to roll a 15. If you succeed the first part of the attack throw, then you roll the dice for damage. And that's just dependent on what your weapon is. So if you do 5 to 15 damage, you'll roll and it'll depend how much damage you're going to get. Basically, damage is done by rolling different types of die. So it's not actually like when it's 5 through 15, it probably means that it rolls like let's say 2 d8s plus 3, you know, type shit. So it'll roll 2 specific dice or 1 specific dice, and then it'll add like damage on top of that for a lot of weapons, or it'll just do like 1 to 8, and that's just rolling a d8. So that's what the game will do. It'll roll the dice, and then that's how much damage you will get. Saving throws on different spells. Enemies can cast these spells on you too. You can cast a spell on an enemy. It'll say at the bottom of the spell like wisdom saving throw, intelligence saving throw. That just means that it's basically kind of like a roll. You'll have to roll, and then you'll get your wisdom modifier. If it's a wisdom saving throw, your intelligence modifier added on top. The higher your wisdom or intelligence or whatever it needs, sometimes they need dex save, sometimes strength. The higher that stat is, the more likely you are to succeed in a saving throw against it. So you can also check out enemies by just inspecting them, like I said, or examining them, and it'll tell you their different stats. So the higher stats, let's say they have an 18 dexterity but a 10 wisdom, you want to try to target them with a spell that is dexterity based because they have a low dexterity. Spells will dictate what happens if they do save. If they don't dictate it, they basically it's completely nullified. Others will dictate they'll take half damage. Others will dictate that the effect lasts only half as long. So you just have to read that and see what you're kind of risking there. Half damage is still nice, you know, it's better than nothing. Whereas the spells that don't take anything, if you fail, if they succeed the saving throw, then you're just going to do basically nothing. It's a wasted turn. Proficiencies, real quick, you can look in your character sheet to see all your proficiencies. Anything you're not proficient in, you don't want to equip. So you have different weapon, armor proficiencies. You even have like a music proficiency if you want to play musical instruments. You don't want to equip any weapons or any armor that you're not proficient in. It's going to be a bad time for you. It basically just makes you a lot weaker, especially with weapons. Makes you a lot weaker. You don't do as much damage. You're way less likely to actually land an attack, so don't do that. Advantage and disadvantage, real quick. Advantage is when you get to roll 2 dice. Disadvantage is when you get to roll 2 dice as well. The 2 dice, if one is a 20 and one is a 1, it'll pick the 20. So you will succeed the check basically no matter what if you land a 20, right? So advantage is great because it gives you a much higher chance of actually getting a good roll. Whereas disadvantage is the exact opposite of that. You roll 2 dice and take the lowest number. So if you roll a 1 and a 20, you're taking the 1 out of that equation. You don't want to have disadvantage. If enemies have disadvantage against you, which is great, especially if you get the high ground and you make a ranged attack on an enemy or a spell that is on the low ground, you'll get advantage automatically. Very useful, guys. Advantage and disadvantage. There are a lot of spells that can give it as well. You definitely want advantage anytime you can get it. All right, so a little bit about skills here. Skills you choose at the beginning of the game, but you can also get through leveling up, I believe. Maybe some specific feats that improve your rolls and give you basically proficiency as if you would have proficiency in armor or weapons in that kind of skill. So they're used for a lot of checks in the world, such as perception. These things will kind of help you in the world, as well as you can use those in dialogues as well. Mainly, obviously, like the charisma based skills are used the most, like persuasion, intimidation, but almost every skill in this game, actually, I would say probably all of the skills in this game do matter for, at the very least, talking to people, and some matter more in the open world, like I said, with perception. That's how you'll find traps. Every skill will be checked at some point just through wandering the world or through talking to people. When you scroll over a dialogue option, it'll say on the left side, intimidation maybe, and you scroll over intimidation, it'll actually tell you what your proficiency is. So it'll say +2 or +4 to the dice roll, and then you might even get advantage. So the best thing to do is to scroll through those options on the left side that's in like little brackets during each dialogue, and to choose the one that just has the best chance of succeeding. When you level up to 4, 8, and 12, depending, if you multi-class in this game, you might actually not get all your feats. You can get 3 feats in this game, but if you multi-class, you have to have, let's say you multi-class into 2 different classes. One class has to be level 8 and one class has to be level 4, because it's every 4 levels in a class you gain a feat. So if you had 3 classes and they were all level 4, you get 3 feats. But if you were level 9 in a class and level 3 in another, you'd only get 2 feats. You wouldn't get that 3rd feat. So that's really dependent, but these feats are pretty huge, guys. So feats, you get to choose from a long list of different upgrades to your character. Basically, they're pretty significant, but the biggest one everybody says to take is pretty obvious. It's called ability improvement. You can take that every time if you want, and that lets you upgrade 2 stats, which means you could upgrade one attribute ability, they're called abilities in this game, like I said, 2 times. So if you get that charisma, let's say your charisma based class and it's 17 and you want to get it to 20, then you take it from 17, 18, 19, and then you can ability improvement at level 8 if you want, or you can pick another feat that just upgrades your charisma by 1, your charisma 20, and then you get the additional bonuses from that other feat. So yeah, a lot of good feats. I definitely recommend attribute improvement for the first one, and then you can kind of find another feat to max that attribute to 20 and get some additional benefits. And then if you want, you could just multi-class into something else without putting 4 levels in, or you could get another good feat that you find throughout the list. They're pretty great upgrades to your character. Last thing that really is important for beginners is what the difference between short rest and long rest. So short rest basically will give you 50% more, 50% of your HP back. Okay, so it heals your whole party by 50%. Sometimes based on different feats or something like that, you can get full HP, but yeah, basically 50%. And anything that's restored on a short rest, whether that be warlock spell slots or some class abilities, they'll get restored on a short rest as well. So if you're like for a warlock, for example, short rests are very powerful. You get 2 short rests per long rest. So after you short rest twice, you need to long rest. But the difference between that and a long rest is the long rest will restore your short rests, and also it replenishes everything. Okay, so everybody's back to full HP. Everybody has all their spell slots back. Everything is good. The day's nice. Let's put a fucking smile on our face, right? Everything's going good. So long rests are definitely more powerful than short rests, but you can't spam long rests because you actually need food. When you collect food, it has a certain number on it, which dedicates it like to your supplies. So some food gives more supplies than others, but they all go into like this big supplies pool, which it costs you 40 supplies to rest, but it's not that big a deal, guys. I have like 800 supplies. It's really easy to get supplies, and you don't really short rest too often. So whenever you feel like you're low on spell slots, half of your party maybe has none, it's probably time to long rest. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this beginner guide has helped you. If it has, leave a fat like. Every like you give me, my dick grows in an inch, so I would really appreciate that. Make sure to comment down below maybe what race you guys chose. I think it's pretty interesting to see what race everybody's running. Maybe the race class combination as well. I'd be really interested in hearing. And I hope you guys are enjoying enjoying the game. Let me know if you're enjoying the game. I fucking love this game. This game goes nuts to butts. And I reply to all comments. Please do. I love talking to you guys. Okay, but yeah, check out my character creation guide right here. I already said it in the beginning of the video, but if you got to the end and you're still kind of curious, like, dude, I talk about it in depth, really hardcore. You're gonna love it, okay? Peace and hair grease. Peace the fuck out.